Tonight,
the race to become an AI superpower is on.
the politics of artificial intelligence,
There will be a Chinese tech sector, and there will be an American tech sector.
the new tech war,
The more data, the better the AI works. So in the age of AI, where data is the new oil, China is the new Saudi Arabia.
the future of work,
When I increase productivity through automation, jobs go away.
I believe about 50% of jobs will be somewhat or extremely threatened by AI in the next 15 years or so.
AI and corporate surveillance,
We thought that we were searching Google. We had no idea that Google was searching us.
and the threat to democracy.
China is on its way to building a total surveillance state.
Tonight on Frontline,
It has pervaded so many elements of everyday life. How do we make it transparent and accountable?
in the age of AI. This is the world's most complex board game. There are more possible moves in the game of Go than there are atoms in the universe. Legend has it that in 2300 BCE, Emperor Yao devised it to teach his son discipline, concentration, and balance. And over 4,000 years later, this ancient Chinese game would signal the start of a new industrial age. It was 2016 in Seoul, South Korea.
Can machines overtake human intelligence? A breakthrough moment when the world champion of the ancient board game Go takes on an AI program developed by Google.
여전히 자신감은 있는 상태고요. 아무래도 역시 아직은 인간의 직관력이나 이런 감각들을 컴퓨터인 인공지능이 따라오기에는 약간 무리가 있지 않나 이렇게 생각을 해서 제가 꼭
In countries where it's very popular, like China and Japan and South Korea, to them Go is not just a game, right? It's like how you learn strategy. It has an almost spiritual component. You know, if you talk to South Koreans, right, and Lee Sedol is the world's greatest Go player, is the national hero in South Korea, they were sure that Lee Sedol would beat AlphaGo hands down.
Google's AlphaGo was a computer program that, starting with the rules of Go and a database of historical games, had been designed to teach itself.
I was one of the commentators at the Lee Sedol games. And yes, it was watched by tens of millions of people.
Throughout Southeast Asia, this was seen as a sports spectacle with national pride at stake. But much more was in play. This was the public unveiling of a form of artificial intelligence called deep learning that mimics the neural networks of the human brain.
So what happens with machine learning or artificial intelligence, initially with AlphaGo, is that the machine is fed all kinds of Go games. And then it studies them, learns from them, and it figures out its own moves. And because it's an AI system, it's not just following instructions, it's figuring out its own instructions. It comes up with moves that humans hadn't thought of before. So it studies games that humans have played, it knows the rules, and then it comes up with creative moves.
와, 정말 생각지도 못한.
That's a very surprising move.
I thought it was a mistake.
Game 2, Move 37.
That move 37 was a move that humans could not fathom, but yet it ended up being brilliant and woke people up to say, wow, after thousands of years of playing, we never thought about making a move like that.
Oh, he resigned. It looks like Lee Sedol has just resigned, actually.
In the end, the scientists watched their algorithms win 4 of the games. Lee Sedol took 1.
What happened with Go, first and foremost, was a huge victory for DeepMind and for AI, right? It wasn't that the computers beat the humans. It was that, one type of intelligence beat another.
Artificial intelligence had proven it could marshal a vast amount of data beyond anything any human could handle and use it to teach itself how to predict an outcome. The commercial implications were enormous.
While AlphaGo is a toy game, but its success and its waking everyone up, I think, is going to be remembered as the pivotal moment where AI became mature and everybody jumped on the bandwagon.
This is about the consequences of that defeat. How the AI algorithms are ushering in a new age of great potential and prosperity. But an age that will also deepen inequality, challenge democracy, and divide the world into 2 AI superpowers. Tonight, 5 stories about how artificial intelligence is changing our world. China has decided to chase the AI future.
The difference between the internet mindset and the AI mindset.
A future made and embraced by a new generation.
Well, it's hard not to feel the kind of immense energy and also the obvious fact of the demographics. They're mostly very younger people. So that this clearly is technology which is being generated by a whole new generation.
Orville Schell is one of America's foremost China scholars. He first came here 45 years ago.
When I first came here in 1975, the Chairman Mao was still alive, the Cultural Revolution was coming on, and there wasn't a single whiff of anything of what you see here. It was unimaginable. In fact, in those years, one very much thought this is the way China is, this is the way it's going to be, and the fact that it has gone through so many different changes since is quite extraordinary.
This extraordinary progress goes back to that game of Go.
I think that the government recognized that this was a sort of critical thing for the future, and we need to catch up in this, that, we cannot have a foreign company showing us up at our own game, and this is going to be something that is going to be critically important in the future. So, we called it the Sputnik moment for the Chinese government. The Chinese government kind of woke up.
As we often say in China, the beginning is the most difficult part.
In 2017, Xi Jinping announced the government's bold new plans to an audience of foreign diplomats. China would catch up with the U.S. in artificial intelligence by 2025 and lead the world by 2030.
And intensify cooperation in frontier areas such as digital economy, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, and quantum computing.
Today, China leads the world in e-commerce. Drones delivered to rural villages. And a society that bypassed credit cards now shops in stores without cashiers, where the currency is facial recognition.
No country has ever moved that fast. And in a short 2.5 years, China's AI implementation really went from minimal amount to probably about 17 or 18 unicorns, that is billion-dollar companies in AI today. And that progress is hard to believe.
The progress was powered by a new generation of ambitious young techs pouring out of Chinese universities, competing with each other for new ideas, and financed by a new cadre of Chinese venture capitalists. This is Sinovation, created by U.S.-educated AI scientist and businessman Kai-Fu Lee.
Well, these unicorns, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the general AI area. And unicorn means $1 billion company, a company whose valuation or market capitalization is at $1 billion or higher. I think we put 2 unicorns to show $5 billion or higher.
Kai-Fu Lee was born in Taiwan. His parents sent him to high school in Tennessee. His PhD thesis at Carnegie Mellon was on computer speech recognition, which took him to Apple.
Well, reality is a step closer to science fiction with Apple Computer's new developed program that allows...
And at 31, an early measure of fame.
And Kai-Fu Lee, the inventor of Apple's speech recognition technology.
Casper copied this to make right 2. Casper paste. Casper 72-point italic outline.
He would move on to Microsoft Research in Asia and became the head of Google China. 10 years ago, he started Sinovation in Beijing and began looking for promising startups and AI talent.
So the Chinese entrepreneurial companies started as copycats, but over the last 15 years, China has developed its own form of entrepreneurship. And that entrepreneurship is described as tenacious, very fast, winner-take-all, and incredible work ethic. I would say a few thousand Chinese top entrepreneurs, they could take on any entrepreneur anywhere in the world.
Entrepreneurs like Cao Shudong, the 33-year-old CEO of a new startup called Momenta. This is a ring road around Beijing. The car is driving itself.
You see another cutting.
Yeah.
Cao has no doubt about the inevitability of autonomous vehicles.
Just like AlphaGo can beat the human player in Go, I think the machine will definitely surpass the human driver in the end.
Recently, there have been cautions about how soon autonomous vehicles will be deployed. But Cao and his team are confident they're in for the long haul.
US will be the first to deploy, but China may be the first to popularize. It's 50-50 right now. US is ahead in technology. China has a larger market, and the Chinese government is helping with infrastructure efforts. For example, building a new city the size of Chicago with autonomous driving enabled, and also a new highway that has sensors built in to help autonomous vehicle be safer.
Their early investors included Mercedes-Benz.
I feel very lucky and very inspiring and very exciting that we're living in this era.
Life in China is largely conducted on smartphones. 1 billion people use WeChat, the equivalent of Facebook, Messenger, and PayPal, and much more combined into just one super app. And there are many more.
China is the best place for AI implementation today because the vast amount of data that's available in China. China has a lot more users than any other country, 3 to 4 times more than the US. There are 50 times more mobile payments than the US. There are 10 times more food deliveries, which serve as data to learn more about user behavior than the US. 300 times more shared bicycle rides. And each shared bicycle ride has all kinds of sensors submitting data up to the cloud. We're talking about maybe 10 times more data than the US. And AI is basically run on data and fueled by data. The more data, the better the AI works. More importantly than how brilliant the researcher is working on the problem. So in the age of AI, where data is the new oil, China is the new Saudi Arabia.
And access to all that data means that the deep learning algorithm can quickly predict behavior, like the creditworthiness of someone wanting a short-term loan.
Here is our application, and the customer can choose how many money they want to borrow and how long they want to borrow, and they can input their data here, and after that, you can just borrow very quickly.
The CEO shows us how quickly you can get a loan.
It has done.
It takes an average of 8 seconds.
It has passed to banks. Wow. Yeah, our job is finished.
In the 8 seconds, the algorithm has assessed 5,000 personal features from all your data.
12,000 features. That is related with the delinquency. When maybe the banks only use few, maybe 10 features when they are doing their risk management.
Processing millions of transactions, it'll dig up features that would never be apparent to a human loan officer. Like how confidently you type your loan application. Or, surprisingly, if you keep your cell phone battery charged.
It's very interesting. The battery of the phone is related with their delinquency rate. Someone who has much more lower battery, they get much more dangerous than others.
It's probably unfathomable to an American how a country can dramatically evolve itself from a copycat laggard to all of a sudden to nearly as good as the US in technology.
Like this facial recognition startup he invested in. Megvii was started by 3 young graduates in 2011. It's now a world leader in using AI to identify people.
It's pretty fast. For example, on the mobile device, we have timed the facial recognition speed. It's actually less than 100 milliseconds. So that's very, very fast. So 0.1 second that we'll be able to recognize you, even on a mobile device.
The company claims the system is better than any human at identifying people in its database. And for those who aren't, it can describe them. Like our director, what he's wearing, and a good guess at his age, missing it by only a few months.
We are the first one to really take facial recognition to commercial quality.
That's why in Beijing today you can pay for your KFC with a smile.
You know, it's not so surprising. We've seen the Chinese companies catching up to the US in technology for a long time. And so if particular effort and attention is paid in a specific sector, it's not so surprising that they would surpass the rest of the world. And facial recognition is one of the first places we've seen that start to happen.
It's a technology prized by the government, like this program in Shenzhen to discourage jaywalking. Offenders are shamed in public, and with facial recognition, can be instantly fined. Critics warn that the government and some private companies have been building a national database from dozens of experimental social credit programs.
The government wants to integrate all these individual behaviors or corporations' records into some kind of a matrix and compute out a single number or set of number associated with an individual, a citizen, and using that to implement a incentive or punishment system.
A high social credit number can be rewarded with discounts on bus fares. A low number can lead to a travel ban. Some say it's very popular with the Chinese public that wants to punish bad behavior. Others see a future that rewards party loyalty and silences criticism.
Right now, there is no final system being implemented. And from those experiments, we already see the possibility of what this social credit system can do to individual. It's very powerful, Orwellian-like, and it's extremely troublesome in terms of civil liberty.
Every evening in Shanghai, ever-present cameras record the crowds as they surge down to the Bund, the promenade along the banks of the Huangpu River. Once, the great trading houses of Europe came here to do business with the Middle Kingdom. In the last century, they were all shut down by Mao's revolution. But now, in the age of AI, people come here to take in a spectacle that reflects China's remarkable progress and illuminates the great political paradox of capitalism taken root in the communist state.
People have called it market Leninism, authoritarian capitalism. We are watching a kind of a Petri dish in which an experiment of, extraordinary importance to the world is being carried out. Whether you can combine these things and get something that's more powerful, that's coherent, that's durable in the world, whether you can bring together a one-party state with an innovative sector, both economically and technologically innovative, and that's something we thought could not coexist.
As China reinvents itself, it has set its sights on leading the world in artificial intelligence by 2030. But that means taking on the world's most innovative AI culture. On an interstate in the U.S. Southwest, artificial intelligence is at work solving the problem that's become emblematic of the new age, replacing a human driver. This is the company's CEO, 24-year-old Alex Rodriguez.
The more things we build successfully, the less people ask questions about how old you are when you have working trucks.
And this is what he's built. Commercial goods are being driven from California to Arizona on Interstate 10. There is a driver in the cab, but he's not driving. It's a path set by a CEO with an unusual CV.
Are we ready, Henry? The aim is to score these pucks into the scoring area.
So I did competitive robotics starting when I was 11, and I took it very, very seriously. To give you a sense, I won the Robotics World Championships for the first time when I was 13. Been to Worlds 7 times between the ages of 13 and 20-ish. I eventually founded a team, did a lot of work at a very high competitive level. Things are looking pretty good.
This was a prototype of sorts, from which he has built his multi-million-dollar company.
Hadn't built a robot in a while, wanted to get back to it, and felt that this was by far the most exciting piece of robotics technology that was up and coming. A lot of people told us we wouldn't be able to build it, but knew roughly the techniques that you would use. And I was pretty confident that if you put them together, you would get something that worked. Took the summer off, built in my parents' garage a golf cart that could drive itself.
That golf cart got the attention of Silicon Valley and the first of several rounds of venture capital. He formed a team and then decided the business opportunity was in self-driving trucks. He says there's also a human benefit.
If we can build a truck that's 10 times safer than a human driver, then not much else actually matters. When we talk to regulators especially, everyone agrees that the only way that we're going to get to 0 highway deaths, which is everyone's objective, is to use self-driving. And so I'm sure you've heard the statistic, more than 90% of all crashes have a human driver as the cause. And so if you want to solve traffic fatalities, which in my opinion are the single biggest tragedy that happens year after year in the United States, this is the only solution.
It's an ambitious goal, but only possible because of the recent breakthroughs in deep learning.
Artificial intelligence is one of those key pieces that has made it possible now to do driverless vehicles where it wasn't possible 10 years ago, particularly in the ability to see and understand scenes. A lot of people don't know this, but it's remarkably hard for computers until very, very recently to do even the most basic visual tasks, like seeing a picture of a person and knowing that it's a person. And we've made gigantic strides with artificial intelligence in being able to see and understanding tasks, and that's obviously fundamental to being able to understand the world around you with the sensors that you have available.
That's now possible because of the algorithms written by Yoshua Bengio and a small group of scientists.
There are many aspects of the world which we can't explain with words. And that part of our knowledge is actually probably the majority of it. So like the stuff we can communicate verbally is the tip of the iceberg. And so to get at the bottom of the iceberg, the solution was the computers have to acquire that knowledge by themselves from data, from examples, just like children learn, most not from their teachers, but from interacting with the world and playing around and trying things and seeing what works and what doesn't work.
This is an early demonstration. In 2013, DeepMind scientists set a machine learning program on the Atari video game Breakout. The computer was only told the goal, to win the game. After 100 games, it learned to use the bat at the bottom to hit the ball and break the bricks at the top. After 300, it could do that better than a human player. After 500 games, it came up with a creative way to win the game by digging a tunnel on the side and sending the ball around the top to break many bricks with one hit. That was deep learning.
That's the AI program based on learning, really, that has been so successful in the last few years and it wasn't clear 10 years ago that it would work, but it has completely changed the map and is now used in almost every sector of society.
Even the best and brightest among us, we just don't have enough compute power inside of our heads.
Amy Webb is a professor at NYU and founder of the Future Today Institute.
As AI progresses, the great promise is that these machines, alongside of us, are able to think and imagine and see things in ways that we never have before, which means that maybe we have some kind of new, weird, seemingly implausible solution to climate change. Maybe we have some radically different approach to dealing with incurable cancers. The real practical and wonderful promise is that machines help us be more creative. And using that creativity, we get to terrific solutions.
Solutions that could come unexpectedly to urgent problems.
It's going to change the face of breast cancer. Right now, 40,000 women in the U.S. alone die from breast cancer every single year.
Dr. Connie Lehman is head of the Breast Imaging Center at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston.
We've become so complacent about it, we almost don't think it can really be changed. We somehow think we should put all of our energy into chemotherapies to save women with metastatic breast cancer, and yet, you know, when we find it early, we cure it, and we cure it without having the ravages to the body when we diagnose it late. This shows the progression of a small spot from 1 year to the next, and then to the diagnosis of the small cancer here.
This is what happened when a woman who had been diagnosed with breast cancer started to ask questions about why it couldn't have been diagnosed earlier.
Really brings a lot of anxiety, and you're asking the questions, you know, am I going to survive? What's going to happen to my son? And I start asking other questions.
She was used to asking questions. At MIT's Artificial Intelligence Lab, Professor Regina Barzilay uses deep learning to teach the computer to understand language, as well as read text and data.
I was really surprised at the very basic question that I asked my physicians, which were really excellent physicians here at MGH. They couldn't give me answers that I was looking for.
She was convinced that if you analyze enough data, from mammograms to diagnostic notes, the computer could predict early-stage conditions.
If we fast forward from 2012 to 13 to 2014, we then see when Regina was diagnosed, because of this spot on her mammogram. Is it possible with more elegant computer applications that we might have identified this spot the year before, or even back here?
So those are standard prediction problems in machine learning. There is nothing special about them. And to my big surprise, none of the technologies that we are developing at MIT, even in the most simple form, doesn't penetrate the hospital.
Regina and Connie began the slow process of getting access to thousands of mammograms and records from MGH's breast imaging program.
So our first foray was just to take all of the patients we had at MGH during a period of time who had had breast surgery for a certain type of high-risk lesion. And we found that most of them didn't really need the surgery. They didn't have cancer, but about 10% did have cancer. With Regina's techniques in deep learning and machine learning, we were able to predict the women that truly needed the surgery and separate out those that really could avoid the unnecessary surgery.
What machine can do, it can take hundreds of thousands of images where the outcome is known and learn, based on how, pixels are distributed, what are the very unique patterns that correlate highly with future occurrence of the disease. So instead of using human capacity to kind of recognize pattern, formalize pattern, which is inherently limited by our cognitive capacity and how much we can see and remember, we're providing machine with a lot of data and make it learn this prediction.
So we are using technology not only to be better at assessing the breast density, but to get more to the point of what we're trying to predict. Does this woman have a cancer now? And will she develop a cancer in 5 years? And that's, again, where the artificial intelligence, machine and deep learning can really help us and our patients.
In the age of AI, the algorithms are transporting us into a universe of vast potential and transforming almost every aspect of human endeavor and experience. Andrew McAfee is a research scientist at MIT who co-authored The Second Machine Age.
The great compliment that a songwriter gives another one is, gosh, I wish I'd written that one. The great compliment a geek gives another one is, wow, I wish I had drawn that graph. So I wish I had drawn this graph.
The graph uses a formula to show human development and growth since 2000 BCE.
The state of human civilization is not very advanced, and it's not getting better very quickly at all. And this is true for thousands and thousands of years. When we formed empires and empires got overturned, when we tried democracy, when we invented zero and mathematics and fundamental discoveries about the universe, big deal. The numbers don't change very much. What's weird is that the numbers change essentially in the blink of an eye at one point in time, and it goes from really horizontal, unchanging, uninteresting, to holy Toledo, crazy vertical. And then the question is, what on earth happened to cause that change? And the answer is the Industrial Revolution. There were other things that happened, but really what fundamentally happened is we overcame the limitations of our muscle power. Something equally interesting is happening right now. We are overcoming the limitations of our minds. We're not getting rid of them, we're not making them unnecessary, but holy cow, can we leverage them and amplify them now? You have to be a huge pessimist not to find that profoundly good news.
I really do think the world has entered a new era. Artificial intelligence holds so much promise, but it's going to reshape every aspect of the economy, so many aspects of our lives, because AI is a little bit like electricity. Everybody's going to use it. Every company is going to be incorporating AI, integrating it into what they do. Governments are going to be using it. Nonprofit organizations are going to be using it. It's going to create all kinds of benefits in ways large and small, and challenges for us as well.
The challenges, the benefits. The autonomous truck represents both as it maneuvers into the marketplace. The engineers are confident that, in spite of questions about when this will happen, they can get it working safely sooner than most people realize.
I think that you will see the first vehicles operating with no one inside them moving freight in the next few years. And then you're going to see that expanding to more freight, more geographies, more weather over time as that capability builds up. We're talking like less than half a decade.
He already has a Fortune 500 company as a client, shipping appliances across the Southwest. He says the sales pitch is straightforward.
They spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year shipping parts around the country. We can bring that cost in half, and they're really excited to be able to start working with us, both because of the potential savings from deploying self-driving, and also because of all the operational efficiencies that they see. The biggest one being able to operate 24 hours a day. So right now, human drivers are limited to 11 hours by federal law, and a driverless truck obviously wouldn't have that limitation.
The idea of a driverless truck comes up often in discussions about artificial intelligence. Steve Vaseli is a sociologist who drove a truck while researching his book, The Big Rig, about the industry.
This is one of the most remarkable stories in U.S. labor history, I think, is, the decline of unionized trucking. The industry was deregulated in 1980. And at that time, truck drivers were earning the equivalent of over $100,000 in today's dollars. And today, the typical truck driver will earn a little over $40,000 a year. And I think it's an important part of the automation story, right? Why are they so afraid of automation? Because we've had 4 decades of rising inequality in wages, and if anybody is going to take it on the chin from automation in the trucking industry, the first in line is going to be the driver, without a doubt.
For his research, Vaseli tracked down truckers and their families like Sean and Hope Cumby of Beaverton, Michigan.
Hey, Hope. I'm Steve Vaseli.
Hi, Steve. Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you, too. Thanks.
And their son, Charlie.
This is Daddy, me, Daddy, and Mommy.
But Daddy's not here. Sean Cumby's truck has broken down in Tennessee. Hope, who drove a truck herself, knows the business well.
We made $150,000, right, in a year. That sounds great, right? That's like good money. We paid $100,000 in fuel. Okay, so right there, now I made $50,000. But I didn't really, because, you get an oil change every month, so it's $300 a month. You still have to do all the maintenance. We had a motor blowout, right? $13,000. Right? I know. I mean, I choke up a little just thinking about it, because it was $13,000, and we were off work for 2 weeks. So by the end of the year, with that $150,000, by the end of the year, we'd made about $22,000.
In a truck stop in Tennessee, Sean has been sidelined waiting for a new part. The garage owner is letting him stay in the truck to save money.
Hi, baby. Hey, how's it going? It's going. Chunky butt. Hi, Chunky butt. What are you doing? Believe it or not, I do it because I love it. I mean, it's in the blood. 3rd generation driver. And my granddaddy told me a long time ago, when I was probably 11, 12 years old, probably, he said, the world meets nobody halfway. Nobody. He said, if you want it, you have to earn it. And that's what I do every day. I live by that creed, and I've lived by that since it was told to me.
So if you're down for a week in a truck, you still have to pay your bills. I have enough money in my checking account at all times to pay a month's worth of bills. That does not include my food. That doesn't include field trips for my son's school. My son and I just went to our yearly doctor appointment. I took money out of my son's piggy bank to pay for it, because it's not scheduled in. It's not something that you can, afford. I mean, like when, sorry.
It's okay.
Have you guys ever talked about self-driving trucks? Is he?
So kind of. I asked him once, you know, and he laughed so hard. He's no way will they ever have a truck that can drive itself.
It's kind of interesting when you think about it. You know, they're putting all this new technology into things, but, you know, it's still man-made, and man, you know, does make mistakes. I really don't see it being a problem with the industry because, one, you still got to have a driver in it because I don't see it doing city. I don't see it doing, you know, main things. I don't see it backing into a dock. I don't see the automation part, you know, doing maybe the box trailer side, you know, I can see that, but not stuff like I do. So I really ain't worried about the automation of trucks.
How near of a future is it?
Yeah, self-driving. So some companies are already operating. Embark, for instance, it's one that has been doing driverless trucks on the interstate in what's called exit-to-exit self-driving, and they're currently running real freight.
Really?
Yeah, on I-10.
Shower guest 100. Your shower is now ready.
Over time, it has become harder and harder for veteran independent drivers like the Cumbys to make a living. They've been replaced by younger, less experienced drivers.
So the trucking industry's $740 billion a year, and again, in many of these operations, labor's a third of that cost. By my estimate, I think we're in the range of 300,000 or so jobs in the foreseeable future that could be automated to some significant extent.
The AI future was built with great optimism out here in the West. In 2018, many of the people who invented it gathered in San Francisco to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the industry magazine.
Howdy, welcome to Wired 25.
It is a celebration for sure, but there's also a growing sense of caution and even skepticism.
We're having a really good weekend here.
Nick Thompson is editor-in-chief of Wired.
When it started, it was very much a magazine about what's coming and why you should be excited about it. Optimism was the defining feature of Wired for many, many years. Or as our slogan used to be, change is good. And over time, it's shifted a little bit. And now it's more, we love technology, but let's look at some of the big issues and let's look at some of them critically. And let's look at the way algorithms are changing the way we behave for good and for ill. So the whole nature of Wired has gone from a champion of technological change to more of a observer of technological change.
So before we start,
There are 25 speakers, all named as icons of the last 25 years of technological progress.
Why is Apple so secretive?
Joni Ive, who designed Apple's iPhone.
It would be bizarre not to be.
There's this question of like, what are we doing here in this life, in this reality?
Jaron Lanier, who pioneered virtual reality.
Cutting edge of the next.
And Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon.
Amazon was a garage startup. Now it's a very large company. Two kids in a dorm.
His message is, all will be well in the new world.
I guess, first of all, I remain incredibly optimistic about technology. And technologies always are two-sided, but that's not new. That's always been the case. And we will figure it out. The last thing you would ever want to do is stop the progress of new technologies, even when they are dual use.
But, says Thompson, beneath the surface, there's a worry most of them don't like to talk about.
There are some people in Silicon Valley who believe that you just have to trust the technology. Throughout history, there's been a complicated relationship between humans and machines. We've always worried about machines, and it's always been fine. And we don't know how AI will change the labor force, but it will be okay. So that argument exists. There's another argument, which is what I think most of them believe deep down, which is this is different. We're going to have labor force disruption like we've never seen before. And if that happens, will they blame us?
There is, however, one of the Wired 25 icons willing to take on the issue. On stage, Kai-Fu Lee dispenses with one common fear.
Well, I think there's so many myths out there. I think one myth is that because AI is so good at a single task, that one day we'll wake up and we'll all be enslaved or forced to plug our brains to the AI. But it is nowhere close to displacing humans.
But in interviews around the event and beyond, he takes a decidedly contrarian position on AI and job loss.
The AI giants want to paint a rosier picture because they're happily making money. So I think they prefer not to talk about the negative side. I believe about 50% of jobs will be somewhat or extremely threatened by AI in the next 15 years or so.
Kai-Fu Lee also makes a great deal of money from AI. What separates him from most of his colleagues is that he's frank about its downside.
Yes, we've made about 40 investments in AI. I think based on these 40 investments, most of them are not impacting human jobs. They're creating value, making high margins, inventing a new model. But I could list 7 or 8 that would lead to a very clear displacement of human jobs.
He says that AI is coming, whether we like it or not, and he wants to warn society about what he sees as inevitable.
You have a view which I think is different than many others, which is that AI is not going to take blue-collar jobs so quickly, but is actually going to take white-collar jobs.
Yeah. Well, both will happen. AI will be, at the same time, a replacement for blue-collar, white-collar jobs, and be a great symbiotic tool for doctors, lawyers, and you, for example. But the white-collar jobs are easier to take because they're a pure quantitative analytical process. Let's say reporters, traders, telemarketing, telesales, customer service.
Analysts?
Analysts, yes. These can all be replaced just by a software. To do blue collar, some of the work requires, hand-eye coordination, things that machines are not yet good enough to do.
Today, there are many people who are ringing the alarm. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Half the jobs are going away. I believe that's true. But here's the missing fact. I've done the research on this, and if you go back 20, 30, or 40 years ago, you will find that 50% of the jobs that people performed back then are gone today. Where are all the telephone operators, bowling pin setters, elevator operators? They used to have seas of secretaries in corporations that have now been eliminated, travel agents. You can just go through field after field after field. That same pattern has recurred many times throughout history with each new wave of automation.
But I would argue that history is only trustable if it is multiple repetitions of similar events, not once in a blue moon occurrence. So over the history of many tech inventions, most are small things. Only maybe 3 are at the magnitude of AI revolution. The steam engine, electricity, and the computer revolution. I'd say everything else is too small. And the reason I think it might be something brand new is that AI is fundamentally replacing our cognitive process in doing a job in its significant entirety. And it can do it dramatically better.
This argument about job loss in the age of AI was ignited 6 years ago amid the gargoyles and spires of Oxford University. 2 researchers had been poring through U.S. labor statistics, identifying jobs that could be vulnerable to AI automation.
Well, vulnerable to automation in the context that we discussed 5 years ago now essentially meant that those jobs are potentially automatable over an unspecified number of years. And the figure we came up with was 47%.
47%. That number quickly traveled the world in headlines and news bulletins. But authors Carl Frey and Michael Osborne offered a caution. They can't predict how many jobs will be lost or how quickly. But Frey believes that there are lessons in history.
And what worries me the most is that there is actually one episode that looks quite familiar to today, which is the British Industrial Revolution, where wages didn't grow for 9 decades, and a lot of people actually saw living standards decline as technology progressed.
Saginaw, Michigan knows about decline in living standards. Harry Cripps, an auto worker and a local union president, has witnessed what 40 years of automation can do to a town.
You know, we're one of the cities in the country that I think we were left behind in this recovery. And I don't know how we get on the bandwagon now.
Once this was the UAW hall for one local union. Now, with falling membership, it's shared by 5 locals.
Rudy didn't get his yet.
This day, it's the center for a Christmas food drive. Even in a growth economy, unemployment here is near 6%. Poverty in Saginaw
Steve, you got one more coming.
is over 30%.
Okay. Our factory has about 1.9 million square feet. Back in the 70s, that 1.9 million square feet had about 7,500 UAW automotive workers making a middle-class wage with decent benefits and able to send their kids to college and do all the things that the middle-class family should be able to do. Our factory today, with automation, would probably be about 700 United Auto Workers. That's a dramatic change. A lot of union brothers used to work there, buddy.
Yeah, TRW plant. That was unfortunate.
Delphi, looks like they're starting to tear it down now. Wow. Automation is definitely taking away a lot of jobs. Robots, I don't know how they buy cars. I don't know how they buy sandwiches. I don't know how they go to the grocery store. They definitely don't pay taxes with search the infrastructure. So you don't have the sheriffs and the police and the firemen and anybody else that supports the city is gone because there's no tax base. Robots don't pay taxes.
The average personal income in Saginaw is $16,000 a year.
A lot of the families that I work with here in the community, both parents are working. They're working 2 jobs. Mainly it's the wages, you know, people not making a decent wage to be able to support a family. Like back in the day, my dad even worked at the plant. My mom stayed home, raised the children, and that give us opportunity to put food on the table and things of that nature. And them times are gone.
If you look at this graph of what's been happening to America since the end of World War II, you see a line for our productivity, and our productivity gets better over time. It used to be the case that our pay, our income, would increase in lockstep with those productivity increases. The weird part about this graph is how the income has decoupled, is not going up the same way that productivity is anymore.
As automation has taken over, workers are either laid off or left with less skilled jobs for less pay, while productivity goes up.
There are still plenty of factories in America. We are a manufacturing powerhouse. But if you go walk around an American factory, you do not see long lines of people doing repetitive manual labor. You see a whole lot of automation. If you go upstairs in that factory and look at the payroll department, you see 1 or 2 people looking into a screen all day. So the activity is still there, but the number of jobs is very, very low because of automation and tech progress. Now, dealing with that challenge and figuring out what the next generation of the American middle class should be doing is a really important challenge, because I'm pretty confident that we are never again going to have this large, stable, prosperous middle class doing routine work.
Evidence of how AI is likely to bring accelerated change to the U.S. workforce can be found not far from Saginaw. This is the U.S. headquarters for one of the world's largest builders of industrial robots, a Japanese-owned company called Fanuc Robotics.
We've been producing robots for well over 35 years, and you can imagine over the years they've changed quite a bit. We're utilizing the artificial intelligence to really make the robots easier to use and be able to handle a broader spectrum of opportunities. We see a huge growth potential in robotics. And we see that growth potential as being really, there's 90% of the market left.
The industry says optimistically that with that growth, they can create more jobs.
Even if there were 5 people on a job, and we reduced that down to 2 people because we automated some level of it, we might produce 2 times more parts than we did before because we automated it. So now there might be the need for 2 more fork truck drivers or 2 more quality inspection personnel. So although we reduce some of the people, we grow in other areas as we produce more things.
When I increase productivity through automation, I lose jobs. Jobs go away, and I don't care what the robot manufacturers say. You aren't replacing those 10 production people that robot is now doing that job with 10 people. You can increase productivity to a level to stay competitive with the global market. That's what they're trying to do.
In the popular telling, blame for widespread job loss has been aimed overseas at what's called offshoring.
We want to keep our factories here. We want to keep our manufacturing here. We don't want them moving to China, to Mexico, to Japan, to India, to Vietnam.
But it turns out most of the job loss isn't because of offshoring.
There's been offshoring, and I think offshoring is responsible for maybe 20% of the jobs that have been lost. I would say most of the jobs that have been lost, despite what most Americans think was due to automation or productivity growth.
Mike Hicks is an economist at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. He and sociologist Emily Warnell have been documenting employment trends in Middle America. Hicks says that automation has been a mostly silent job killer, lowering the standard of living.
So in the last 15 years, the standard of living has dropped by 10 to 15%. So that's unusual in a developed world. A 1-year decline is a recession. A 15-year decline gives an entirely different sense about the prospects of a community. And so that is common from the Canadian border to the Gulf of Mexico and the middle swath of the United States.
Something we're going to do for you guys. These were left over from our suggestion drive that we did. We're going to give them each 2.
Awesome.
I mean, that's going to go a long ways, right? I mean, that'll really help that family out during the holidays.
Yes, well, with the kids home from school, the families have 3 meals a day that they got to put on the table, so it's going to make a big difference. So, thank you guys.
You're
this
welcome.
is wonderful.
Let them know Merry Christmas on behalf of us here at the local, okay?
Absolutely. You guys are just amazing. Thank you. And please tell all the workers how grateful these families will be.
We will.
I mean, this is not a small problem. The need is so great. And I can tell you that it's all races, it's all income classes that you might think someone might be from, but I can tell you that when you see it and you deliver this type of gift to somebody who is in need, just the gratitude that they show you is incredible.
We actually know that people are at greater risk of mortality for over 20 years after they lose their job due to no fault of their own, so something like automation or offshoring. They're at higher risk for cardiovascular disease. They're at higher risk for depression and suicide. But then with the intergenerational impacts, we also see their children are more likely, children of parents who have lost their job due to automation are more likely to repeat a grade, they're more likely to drop out of school, they're more likely to be suspended from school, and they have lower educational attainment over their entire lifetimes.
It's the future of this, not the past, that scares me, because I think we're in the early decades of what is a multi-decade adjustment period.
The world is being reimagined. This is a supermarket. Robots guided by AI pack everything from soap powder to cantaloupes for online consumers. Machines that pick groceries, machines that can also read reports, learn routines and comprehend, are reaching deep into factories, stores, and offices. At a college in Goshen, Indiana, a group of local business and political leaders come together to try to understand the impact of AI and the new machines. Molly Kinder studies the future of work